Hello and welcome to Global News Today, bringing you exclusive interviews with leading experts every weekday here on Arabiya English. I'm Tom Burges Watson. Coming up on today's programme, the Israeli military says it will abide by the ceasefire deal in Gaza. This is health officials there in the Palestinian enclave say that airstrikes these past 24 hours have killed more than 100 people. Coming up, we'll get the latest on the fragile ceasefire deal, as well as the humanitarian situation there in Gaza. Hello and welcome to the programme. The US brokered ceasefire signed on the 10th of October with the goal of ending the war in Gaza is proving to be extremely fragile. Israel has carried out fresh deadly strikes on the Strip, killing, according to medics, more than 100 people in Gaza, dozens of them children, all of that in the space of less than 12 hours. Well, Israel accuses Hamas of killing a soldier along the so-called Yellow Line, the agreed deployment zone. Well, the US President Donald Trump has defended Israel's response, saying it has the right to strike, but insists that nothing would jeopardize the ceasefire. Here's what he said.
As I understand it, they took out an Israeli soldier. I just heard about it a little while ago. They killed an Israeli soldier, so the Israelis hit back, and they should hit back. When that happens, they should hit back.
So do you think does that worry you about the ceasefire? Does that jeopardize the ceasefire in any way?
No, nothing's going to jeopardize. You have to understand, Hamas is a very small part of peace in the Middle East, and they have to behave. They're on the rough side, but they said they would be good, and if they're good, they're going to be happy, and if they're not good, they're going to be terminated.
President Trump speaking there. Meanwhile, Israeli warplanes struck homes, schools and residential blocks across Gaza. This happened in Gaza City, in Beit Lahia in the north, Burej and Nusayrat in the center, and Khan Yunis in the south. Well, the attacks came after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office announced that he had ordered, quote, immediate, powerful strikes.
من وين صبحت نسبي خلاص طيب سايبيني خليني مسكها
Well, we're joined now by Abdallah Kamil, who is a Palestinian politician and member of the Fatah movement. He joins us now from Ramallah. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Mr. Kamil. We were just talking before we crossed to you about the latest violence in Gaza, and I just want to start by asking you, what's your understanding of what triggered this latest flare-up in violence?
Well, everybody knows that Netanyahu has been seizing any excuse so that he could take things back to square one. He has been involved in this war from day one, even just with the truce. When he accepted the truce, it was quite reluctantly with the pressure of the U.S. administration. With that said, Netanyahu realizes that the continuation of the violent cycle could contribute to his survival in power in Israel. He would love to maintain his political coalition. There are immense pressures from Smotrich, Ben Gvir, and other members in his cabinet. Let alone the fact that even Hamas, on the other hand, was not realizing, as we can tell from what has been happening in those details that has been rolled out in President Trump's initiative. Hamas should have been on the same page, especially when we talk about the number of dead bodies. Since Hamas is not aware of the fact that those dead bodies are not under its control, they should have stated that fact from the outset. They should have realized that Netanyahu would be seeking any excuse, even a humble one, so that he could go back to the war.
Okay, so you seem to have criticism for both Hamas and for Israel. I've read some critical comments you've made about Hamas. We'll come to that in just a moment, but I want to ask you about what's happening in the West Bank, because it's been reported that Israeli soldiers have killed 3 Palestinians near the city of Jenin. That happened on Tuesday. What happened there?
Well, Israel has been using all the tools that it does have in the box so that it can perpetuate the state of violence against the Palestinians. It is not only about killing 3 Palestinians. There are many other Palestinians who were killed over the last 2 years. There is just an occupation for the camps and also for Jenin and Tulkarm, and in addition to Nablus and Selfit. So the occupation has been pursuing this policy using the settlers and encouraging them to expand. And we have seen what the settlers have been doing in terms of killing the Palestinian people, just setting their properties on fire, burning their farms. So all these practices by the settlements is the product of a very tight-knit plan of the Israeli government of what they call the dominance, and that has been implemented back in early 2025. Therefore, we have been hearing what the Knesset has been voting for the annexation, and apparently it doesn't take a genius to realize is that they are seeking. The Israelis are seeking genuinely just to annex the West Bank, but thanks just to the U.S. administration and the international community stance that have been opposing this move. And everything, I think, falls under this code.
Okay, and of course, President Trump has been extremely clear about the status of the West Bank, issued what you could call a warning or a threat to Israel not to even entertain this idea. Does that reassure you?
It is quite obvious that that Saudi Arabia position, along with the EU's and mainly France, vis-a-vis the two-state solutions, in addition to the meeting held by President Trump with some Islamic and Arab leaders, have an impact on President Trump's understanding of the broader picture. And that's why we started to see some kind of shift in the U.S. policy vis-a-vis the Israeli-Palestinian struggle. And it is my belief that this somehow has just led us to sigh some relief. So at least we have now a comprehensive just initiative to resolve the Palestinian-Israeli issue on the basis of the two-state solutions and the implementation of the international legitimacy resolutions. I can categorically say that President Trump is the only person who can put the pressure on Israel so that they can really just join the international community's directions following the barrage of recognitions in the Palestinian country. Everyone is calling for those two states. The only person who could curb the Israelis and just draw a line for them, making them just obeying those orders, I think it is only President Trump.
Yes, indeed. And his vice president as well, J.D. Vance, who was very clear with regards to that vote in the Knesset about the annexation of the West Bank. He called it a political stunt, a very foolish one, he said. And he said he took personal offense. We've never heard language like that from Washington with regards to Israel, have we?
Yes, I do agree. There is just a shift in the U.S. tone and rhetoric vis-a-vis Palestine. I think Netanyahu has just caused damage to the image of the United States, given his criminal position and activities are really running counter to the international norms. He has also affected the image of the U.S. in a very bad way. So that's why we believe the United States began to realize that siding by Israel, no matter what it does, could really just backfire on the U.S. and it could also tighten the noose on the United States. Even in New York, we have seen what's been going on there. Everyone has been announcing through the speeches we have heard from countries that have heavy weight. All of them have voiced their opposition to the genocide war. And on the other side, we have also the international courts, the ICC, that has issued a warrant of arrest against Netanyahu and Gallant, and we have also the International Justice Court, and where they have labeled occupation just as a heinous crime. And that's why the United States has genuinely become in troubled waters. And apparently, the United States began changing its rhetoric and tone. We have been hearing these statements from Jared Kushner or from J.D. Vance. They were quite harsh and severe against Israel to the extent that they started threatening them to stop and hold the military aid. And I think without this military assistance, Israel would become quite exposed.
Mr. Kamil, I said earlier on that you had been critical of Hamas, and you were, and I'd like to ask you more questions about that criticism, because you are quoted as saying, and please correct me if I'm misquoting you, you said that Hamas emerged from the tunnels only to crack down on their own people. And I assume you're referring to the executions of what were labeled suspected collaborators. What do you think of how Hamas has played its cards during the last 24 months?
يعني حماس بحكمها لقطاع غزة كان غير شرعيا.
Hamas rules of the Gaza Strip has been quite just illegal. It was a result of the just a coup d'etat against the Palestinian people. Hamas has so far killed more than 800 Palestinian people at that time. With that said, Hamas apparently lacked the necessary wisdom in managing the crisis with Israel. We believe that Hamas should have sought any horizon so that we could reach into a common ground and spare the Palestinian people more woes and sorrows. But sadly, what happened is quite the contrary. Now they started this war under the pretext of stopping the siege on Gaza. But today, what we can see, the results are quite clear. Nobody's talking about Al-Aqsa Mosque. Nobody's talking about the siege. No, it is just the opposite. 53% of the land is under the occupation of Israel. Hamas emerged from the tunnel, and instead of supporting the Palestinian people who have just sacrificed with more than 70,000 martyrs, they haven't done so. Even there could be some shortcomings that could be seen by some people. You can't execute them publicly, just like ISIS. This is a stark reminder of what we saw on social media and TV channels of how ISIS used just to execute some members. And this is quite disgusting, killing the children, killing the elderly people. There are many young people who have been killed by Hamas. And I'm talking about 52 people that have been killed in cold blood without any due process or even giving them their rights. At the Palestinian Authority, we know that there could be some collaborators who are being arrested, but they are subject to due process that could take just 1 year or maybe 2 years, 3 years. And then we can just hand down the verdict. We can say that whether he is guilty or he should be condemned. So it is not just possible to imagine what Hamas has been doing. Maybe some spies or collaborators could be just sent for custody behind bars for 2 or 3 years. And now Hamas is talking about the law. Look who's talking. And he said, they're saying that by having this constitutional reform that have been done, the Palestinian Authority is illegal. I think Hamas is trying through those acts, and especially the public execution of people, Hamas believes that it is exercising the law, which is not right.
Right. Well, that doesn't sound as though Hamas is even entertaining the idea of laying down its weapons and handing over power in Gaza, does it?
واضح تماما أن حماس حتى الآن
you are right. Hamas and so far doesn't seem to be leaning to do so. Though Hamas has agreed to the U.S. proposal and notified the Egyptians and Mr. Hussein Sheikh, the Vice President, and Majid Faraj, the head of intelligence, Hamas told them that they will not disarm unless Palestine is liberated. And honestly, this could take us to another aggression. I think Hamas should have done from the early beginning that I cannot agree on this initiative better than talking about that they would agree on that initiative, and then they will commit many breaches. This is something really sad. We have been quite clear in Fatah. We have told them that they should lay down the arms to the National Palestinian Authority. And we had an agreement also between Fatah and the National Authority, along with Hamas and the Egyptians, where we could have some support committee. And this committee will be led by a minister from the Palestinian government to guarantee the geographical unity, and this would be the core of the Palestinian state that the international community has been advocating for. This recipe is the only one that could take us into a lasting peace, freedom, and independence for the Palestinian people. However, Hamas has just backed down, and that it has made for Fatah and the Egyptians. And this has been quite acknowledged by the Arab Summit that was held in Cairo, and also the Arab Islamic Summit that was held in Riyadh in last year in May, and the ministerial committee that has been set up. And therefore, there was an acknowledgement to have this committee led by the National Authority. This could be the only gateway to resolve the issue of the armed surrender as Hamas promised.
Mr. Kamil, you're quoted as saying that the Palestinian cause is going through a dangerous phase. What did you mean by that?
Yes, it is just a critical stage. It is the most dangerous phase in the Palestinian cause. What we have been through following the 7th of October events in terms of having the Palestinian state has become a far-fetched objective. We have seen Israel has been demonizing so that it could be removing the Palestinian Authority, and it has rejected it just in form and in substance. And on the other hand, Hamas policies seems to be sowing the seeds of division among the Palestinian people, and this is quite serious. I think Hamas should have done differently after all this massive destruction and the number of martyrs. They should have been listening to the will of the Palestinian people and to state that the PLO is the only representative of the Palestinian people and to abide with their obligation, and also to be under the banner and the umbrella and the law of one authority, and this could take us to the political and geographical unity. Yet none of those have been materialized, and Hamas has backed down, and this would exacerbate the situation and take the Palestinian unity group as a wishful thinking, and this comes at the cost of thousands of martyrs. We are at a serious crossroad, and at the same time, the occupation that has been expanding and Judaizing Jerusalem, and the breach of all the obligations that Israel has provided. So apparently we are really in troubled water.
But just to hold you on that, I mean, when you look at everything that's happened in the last 3 weeks since the deal was signed, and when you look at the 20-point plan, and when we talk about the difference in tone between this administration and previous administrations when it comes to calling out Israel, for example, on the issue of annexation of the West Bank, isn't a part of you just a little bit optimistic that there could be a breakthrough this time?
Yes. Apparently, we can see that the U.S. administration has started changing its policies and its tone. With that said, we haven't reached our objectives as Palestinians, and also as the international community wishes to happen. More than 160 countries have recognized the state of Palestine. We need to address the issue from its cause roots, to have a Palestinian state on the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. Mr. Abu Mazen stated that we don't want the arms, we want just a demilitarized country. We would like to live like other nations, like the people in Switzerland. We don't need just the arms of Hamas or any weaponry. So there is a shift, yes, a quiet, genuine shift, but it hasn't just gone to the level where it could be addressed at a large scale to find a solution for the Palestinian cause. Those half-baked solutions will never lead us just to just an entire solution that would stop the bloodshed in Gaza. And we need also to bring an end to the crimes of the Israeli settlers in the West Bank. The West Bank has been going through a lot, and we have not witnessed that just during the entire era of the Israeli occupation. I think they are acting like terrorist organizations with the support of the Israeli government, such as that organization labeled Shabibat al-Tilal or Tadfi' al-Thaman, or paying the cost. So those are really organizations that have been established before 1948 and played a role in the displacement of the Palestinians. They have burned the family of Muhammad Abu Khder. They are carrying all the heinous act of burying properties and killing innocent people. Against this backdrop, we need a solution that would bring an end to all these practices by Israel.
Okay, well, we're going to leave it there because we're out of time. But thank you very much indeed for taking the time to speak to us. Abdallah Kamil, Palestinian politician and member of the Fatah movement. Thank you very much for your time, sir. Well, we can speak now to Dr. Colonel Moshe Elad, who is a Middle East specialist and lecturer. Thank you very much indeed for taking the time to speak to us. What we've seen in the last 24 hours has been probably the most serious flare-up in hostilities since the signing of the truce in mid-October. We're told that Israeli airstrikes killed 104 people in Gaza. What's your understanding of what's happened in Gaza during the last 24 hours?
Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation to talk to you. I would say that Israel's attack on Gaza are not carried out happily or out of a desire to violate the agreement. But when Hamas shoots and kills IDF soldiers during a ceasefire, and IDF has no choice but to open fire so that Hamas understands that every such violation has a price. More than that, anyone who claims that the political right is pressuring Netanyahu should remember that right now Netanyahu has a majority for important votes, even from within the opposition, because he was promised a security belt. So it is possible that the right-wing ministers will resign in the end and cause the government to fall. But the implementation of the agreement does not depend at all on the right-wing ministers. So if I would like to say one more thing about that, what's going on now, it's right now a violation of Hamas, of all this agreement that was started by President Trump. It looks like Hamas doesn't want to implement any part of this agreement, and moreover, they would like to escalate the whole issue in the Gaza front.
But isn't there an argument that after 24 months of violence and atrocities and the dismantling of many aspects of how Hamas operated before, that there are rogue elements operating in Gaza? How can we be so sure that the order to kill that soldier really did come from Hamas?
Of course, Hamas of today is not Hamas 2 years ago. Because, but they are trying to rebuild, they are trying to make over, and it looks like every time they are having some possibility, they would do that. Overall, Israel doesn't see Hamas as willing to abide the President Trump 20-point agreement, and is aware that Qatar, Turkey, 2 countries that support the Muslim Brotherhood, support this terrorist organization as well. And this is actually that bothers Israel very much. According to the statements of Hamas leaders, Hamas doesn't intend to leave the Gaza Strip. They doesn't intend to hand over control of Gaza to another party, like from the Emirates or from Qatar or from Egypt. Nor does it intend to disarm it, and believes that the Qatar and Turkey will protect them even for a future leadership that will be in Gaza from Hamas. This is definitely unacceptable by Israel.
But when you look at what Hamas did at the very beginning of this deal and handed over all of the remaining living hostages to Israel, I mean, why would it do that if it was then going to disregard all the other elements of the deal?
I think that from the very beginning, they didn't have any intention. They were just pretending that they are trying to, for example, to bring back the bodies of the fallen soldiers. At the beginning, they did it, but they decided they should have some chips, like the bodies. So it's so slowly. They are not really bringing them. And in Israel, it's a lot of rage about that. So we have to understand they started something and they stopped it. And from Israeli point of view, this is a very far away violation of the agreement. So Israel informed the United States today that the only way Hamas understands is the use of force. Sorry to say that, but we try everything. Even after they killed two soldiers, two Israeli soldiers, while it was in a status of ceasefire, we started from, we wanted to escape from all these events and to withdraw from the from what we have said about from the very beginning, and what we have agreed with the Americans. And if not Trump and his people, Witkoff and others, Israel would have withdrawn. But look, it continues every day. So I guess even the American said to us, well, guys, go ahead with your punishments because it looks like it's not going to be changed by Hamas.
Well, I mean, 68,000 people or more have already been killed in Gaza. And in the latest flare-up, it's 104 people, of whom it is believed 42 were children. Those are obviously Hamas Health Ministry numbers, but they have also been independently verified by the Agence France-Presse news agency. I mean, that's totally disproportionate, isn't it?
Yes, I think that this is very sad. And unfortunately, we have all the time to explain that while people are hiding, innocent people are hiding in places, you know, like a human shield, and help the terrorists. The Israeli guys, the Israeli soldiers do not have any other choice. And they shoot. And sometimes when they shoot, they kill people, but it is definitely unintentionally. It's not a genocide because we are being all the time accused by genocide. Genocide while you're doing it intentionally. Here we are looking just to kill the people of Hamas. And unfortunately, other people, innocent people, are hiding there, helping them to launch sometimes in the past, to launch missiles. And they were helping in not always, you know, involuntarily. Sometimes they were forced to do that. We understand. But, you know, this is actually the bad results of this war.
I mean, the problem here is, of course, that we understand that many elements of Hamas have been living underground these last 2 years. They've been living in the tunnels in relative safety, while 2 million ordinary civilians, men, women and children, have been living on the surface not protected. I mean, can't a sophisticated army like Israel's not target its killings a little bit more effectively and pursue those who are underground and keep those who are above the ground safer?
Yes, it sounds like, you know, it was done intentionally, but no, it is not. I guess that it's pretty much hard to do what the American army is doing something when it shoots some tomahawks or other missiles. So they are so precise, they're getting to the people, yeah. And we did it several times in Iran, in Beirut, in other places in order not to hit other targets, unwanted targets. However, I was in the army only 30 years, and I can tell you from my experience, it is so difficult, you know, to see and say after everything what happens, really to try and see why it happened, while sometimes it's a matter of seconds that you have to take a decision. Sometimes it's a very tough decision. Are you shooting or not? Sometimes you see a small kid and you're holding fire, and sometimes you don't see anybody and you start fire and then you kill others. This is exactly how war looks for. We are trying, I guess, our people are getting their orders, and the orders say, hey guys, be careful, do not shoot any innocent people. I'm sure they are trying to do that, they do their best. But sometimes, you know, as I just told you, the mixture of involved and uninvolved people is a disaster in Gaza.
Okay, well, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you for taking the time to speak to us. Dr. Colonel Moshe Elad, thank you very much indeed, sir.
Thank you.
Well, let's find out more now about what's been happening in Gaza these last few days. We can speak to Tess Ingram, who is a spokesperson for UNICEF. She joins us from Al-Mawasi in Gaza. Thank you very much indeed for speaking to us. We understand that more than 100 people, amongst them dozens of children, were killed in the overnight strikes. I mean, what's the latest you've heard about the scale of the damage from these latest airstrikes?
Well, as you say, the biggest cost of these airstrikes has been people's lives, more than 100 people, and we understand reportedly more than 40 children killed in the last 24 hours. Here on the ground, the strikes began yesterday evening and continued throughout the night from the south to the north of the Gaza Strip. I was in Nasser Hospital today in the middle area where I spoke to doctors who had said they had numerous children come in with injuries from last night's strikes. I met one of them, an 11-year-old girl called Toka, who had really bad shrapnel injuries to her leg, her arm, and her brain from a strike on a tent in Khan Yunis last night while she was sleeping. The strike also injured her two brothers, and she's just one of many children across the Gaza Strip who have borne the cost of those strikes last night, Tom.
I mean, Tess, they said that for many years it's been said that Gaza is perhaps the most dangerous place in the world to be a child. And here we are with a ceasefire deal in place, and it sounds like it's still the case.
We've consistently said that Gaza is the most dangerous place in the world to be a child. There were a classroom of children killed every day in Gaza for the past 2 years. Now, this ceasefire has meant some respite from that, but children continue to be killed and injured here in the Gaza Strip. Today, I met a little 5-year-old girl, Tala, who a week ago during this ceasefire was buried underneath rubble from an airstrike that killed both of her grandparents and her uncle. And I met children in hospital today injured in the last 24 hours. So the cost of this, these continuing conflict is weighing heavy on children, as well as the humanitarian crisis, the malnutrition and the deprivation that continues on the ground.
I mean, so many homes have been destroyed in Gaza. I mean, the majority of buildings have been destroyed in the last 2 years. I'm assuming the majority of people, therefore, are still living in tents and will continue to do so for quite some time to come. But have things improved at all since the ceasefire deal came into effect on the 10th of October, Tess?
The situation on the ground is still really difficult for families. They struggle to get the basics that they need to survive. I've spoken to families who walk hours to try and find water, who are still sleeping without shelter, exposed to the increasingly cold conditions here in the Gaza Strip. And food remains something that families are still struggling to access. We have seen improved quantities of food come into the Gaza Strip, but much of it is available in commercial markets at high prices that many families are still struggling to afford. So we need to see more aid coming to the Gaza Strip from all of the available crossings to help alleviate the suffering on the ground.
What items are still in short supply in particular, Tess?
As UNICEF, we've been really focusing on trying to meet children's life-saving needs. We want to get nutrition supplies in to fight the famine. We want to make sure that we can truck safe drinking water to people wherever they are. And we're desperately trying to bring in supplies for the winter: blankets, mattresses, winter clothes for children, tents and tarpaulins. We are getting some of these materials in, but we need to get far more in because the scale of the needs is immense. And there are supplies that are continued to be blocked. For example, our education kits and recreational kits that we want to bring in to help resume schooling and run mental health and psychosocial support sessions for kids, they are continuing to be denied entry by the Israeli authorities.
There are 650,000 school-aged children in Gaza. I'm just wondering to what extent some sort of educational sort of normalcy has returned to their lives.
As UNICEF, we have been able to reach about 100,000 children with learning throughout the course of the conflict. And that's really good news. But of course, as you say, there are 650,000 school-aged children. So our aim with education partners here in Gaza is to try and get all of them back into learning. But that's a really big challenge given the scale of the destruction that we have discussed. We need to find clear space to put up temporary learning centres or semi-permanent schools so that children can return to the classroom with their teachers. And like I said, we need to get these educational materials in with urgency. So teachers have done a fantastic job of improvising as best they can, but we need education materials to come into the Gaza Strip now so that we can scale up schooling for children.
Sure, and you mentioned the mental health of many of these children, and it's impossible to imagine what they've been through these last 24 months. I'm just wondering what sorts of things are being done and what are the needs when it comes to these children's mental health?
I've met so many children here in Gaza who have been through horrors that we can't even begin to imagine. Like that little girl I just spoke about who was buried underneath the rubble, other children who have life-changing injuries, children who've lost family members, their parents, their whole communities. It's an enormous job to begin to try and help children process that trauma, and in many cases, compound trauma of these horrors stacking upon one another. We are running mental health sessions, counselling for children and for their caregivers here in Gaza. But we really need this piece to hold, because for children to begin to process what they've been through, they need the space, the peace, in order to be able to do that. And that's one of the reasons why this ceasefire is so important.
I mean, the scale of the impact of this war on children, it's going to last generations, isn't it?
There will be a lasting impact. There'll be the scars of this for years to come, both the physical scars, like I said, life-changing injuries, but also this trauma that will, in many cases, stay with children. And malnutrition can also have lasting impacts on a child's body, their growth and development that can affect their learning and their futures.
And of course, we've just seen what's been described as the most serious violence in Gaza since the peace deal took effect earlier on this month. I mean, how fragile is the peace deal looking to you?
This is, I think, a really critical moment. And talking to people on the ground today, the message is clear and it's unanimous. Everybody today said to me, this ceasefire must hold. People here have begun to take steps towards rebuilding, repairing their lives, whether that's going back to their neighbourhood and trying to find some sense of home beneath the rubble, or trying to get their child back into some level of learning. Work is happening, and hope remains that that work can continue for the weeks, months and years to come. And I think if this ceasefire were to collapse now, that would be beyond devastating for everybody here in Gaza. And I cannot imagine the impact that it will have, obviously on people's lives, but also on their mental health.
And clearly for you and your colleagues at UNICEF, with airstrikes going on, albeit on a less frequent basis than before the ceasefire deal took effect, I mean, clearly a very dangerous environment for you and your colleagues to be working in, Tess.
This has been one of the most difficult and dangerous places to be a humanitarian. Hundreds of my colleagues here in Gaza have been killed over the last 24 months. We persist. And we really do hope that this ceasefire is seized as an opportunity to allow aid to flow at scale and to allow the UN and our partners to be able to respond to the damage that has been done during this conflict. It's immense, and we have a really big job before us, but we're prepared. We have the team on the ground, we have the trucks pre-positioned outside, and the support of the international community. So this is our moment, after failing Gaza's children for 2 years, to really step up and help families recover.
Okay, and just lastly, in a couple of words, if you don't mind, I mean, how would you describe the humanitarian situation in Gaza right now?
It remains catastrophic. It is not over, is what I would say. For people, the ceasefire has meant that the bombs are not falling, killing their families, leaving them in fear as they put their children to bed at night. But what the ceasefire in and of itself has not done is it has not ended the famine. It has not made the trauma disappear overnight.
Yeah, indeed. And as you said at the beginning, 46 children killed in these latest airstrikes, just really illustrating the degree to which children have been innocent victims, and in such large numbers in this conflict. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us. Tess Ingram, spokesperson for UNICEF. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Well, for more, we're joined now by Murad Sadygzade, who is the president of the Center for Middle Eastern Studies and a lecturer at HEC in Moscow. Thank you very much indeed for taking the time to speak to Arabiya English. The Soviet Union became the first state to recognize Israel back in 1948. Just looking at the way things are today, how would you describe the state of relations between Israel and Russia?
And thank you so much for invitation. So frankly, it's an important question in case of current situation. Yes, it's exactly, USSR was one of the leading states which recognized firstly Israel, because it's hoped that in case, in the current situation, during this time, it will be so like good partnership between two countries, and it will help, for Jewish people who suffer a lot from the activities of Nazi Germany to obtain their own government, to feel their life and to enjoy it. So now, of course, situation is a little bit changed because, frankly, even after the maybe 2-3 years after recognition by the USSR, it was obvious to the Soviet state, to the Moscow, that situation is drastically changed, and Israel is more pro-Western country, pro-American country, and this is why till now we have some, natural relations based on mutual interest, based on understanding each side's national interest, and it's important. Today, Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Putin has a good personal relation. But in case of Gaza conflict, in different conflicts in the region, we should understand that the Moscow position towards this situation is not, like trying to make pressure on someone. Because first of all, we should outline that Russia, of course, calling for, resolution of the conflict, especially Palestinian issue, using the United Nations General Assembly, United Nations Security Council resolution on two-state solution. But unfortunately, we see that current head of the, Prime Minister Bibi, and his also, leading coalition of far-right politicians, they are not ready to follow it. On the other side, Russia is also understands that for future of Palestinian state, Palestinian elites should group, to be together. This is why Russia always tried to invite, if you remember, maybe 1.5 years ago, it was a meeting between Fatah-Hamas and different and other fragmented Palestinian groups in Russia, just trying to make a joint statement on how to, follow the idea, how to follow strategy of creating a Palestinian state, protect the interest of people of Palestine.
Okay. And what do you think Russia and the Kremlin in particular think of Washington's efforts to broker peace in Gaza? What's been the reaction and what's the view of the Kremlin, do you think, about those efforts?
So it's also clear and obvious, 2 days ago, President Putin had some speech in which he outlined that he is in support of the Trump deal, Trump idea of ceasefire in Gaza and for future of Palestine. We are fully support the idea that Trump also declared that he will ban the activities of Israel is aiming to expand its settlements in Western Banks, widening their occupation. Of course, Russia supported, and Russia also for peace. Russia for stability in the region, because the majority of partners, our main partners today, is the government and the people of the Middle East countries like United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Iran, today Syria, the Syrian some working group delegation together with the head of ministry also now in Moscow. And we are support this idea. This is why, if we should held before Arab-Russia summit, but according to this personal decision of President Putin, is postponed, trying to not interrupt the situation. This ceasefire process in Sharm el-Sheikh, and after that, this current idea. This is why, and also during the Valdai speech of President Putin, he outlined clearly that we are ready to support this idea and we will be in favor of ceasefire, because it's time to stop it, it's time to resolve it. But of course, based on the two-state solution, using some United Nations support, maybe some international community support, and Russia will be ready to have, its significant interaction with both sides, with Israeli, with Palestinians, and also, of course, with the United States if it's needed.
Okay, so you're saying that on this particular issue, and it's rare, isn't it, that Moscow and Washington should be aligned on too many issues at the moment, but this is one where it sounds like they're more or less on the same page, and yet Russia wasn't very involved in the latest diplomatic efforts. And I'm wondering, do you think Moscow feels like it's been sidelined?
No, we don't think like we're sidelined. We should be frankly. Today is only one actor in the world who have an ability to make some pressure on Israel to resolve the situation. I'm not just saying something is not true. Yes, we know that the only country now who can make any pressure, make any, attract to responsibility the state of Israel, the Israeli government, is the United States. It's obvious. And today, the Trump, it's the only leader, who can really interact with the Netanyahu and to make some pressure. Russia, in this case, we have, with the both sides, a good historical relations, and we are ready to support. But for, about Gaza conflict, about this Palestinian-Israel issues, we should outline. It's not just because, it's some misunderstanding between different parties. It's because of some domestic problems within the Israel. The desire of the current coalition, far-right coalition together with Netanyahu, just to survive, politically survive. And it's not about, security issues or something like that. It's domestic personal issues. And only the US have an ability to make a pressure. Russia never intervened in domestic policy, in domestic, some situation, cases and issues in different places of the world. We are not interested. We can support if the government will, invite us like it before in Syria. We can come, we can try to support, but we can't, intervene in it, just trying to disclose the sovereignty of the country, because it's not our style of negotiation or not our style of politics. This is why we are not feel ourselves like we are sidelined. We just understand that together, okay, America will do what they want. If they needed our help, we will come, because, also Israel, it was maybe 2 weeks ago, a telephone call and communication between President Putin and Prime Minister Netanyahu. Netanyahu sent some messages using, Russia to Iranian government that we are not would like to involve in some large-scale, war. And it can be also read like some type of mediation and efforts from Russian side. Of course, not all of them in public. We're trying to bring peace again to Middle East, because we're just making for our image, for our reputation, but it's directly affected on our security issues and our economic trade relations with the Middle Eastern countries.
Right, and you mentioned that important point about how Moscow has been trying to broker dialogue between Israel and Iran. So that gives you some influence over the Israeli leadership. And the other area where I thought perhaps there's an opportunity for Moscow to exert some influence on Israeli affairs is because Israel is home to 1.3 million Russian speakers, and I believe Russia is the third most widely spoken native language in Israel after Hebrew and Arabic. So I'm just wondering, through that diaspora in Israel, surely Russia does have some influence, doesn't it?
So, frankly, again, just coming yes, you are right that in Israel we have a big diaspora, Russian-speaking Jewish. They originally from the USSR or from Russia. These current immigrants. So, of course, it's part of one, important ties between two countries, and sometimes it's effectively effects on the different stage. Let us to improve our relations together. Let us to just, to find out resolution in some conflict periods. But I don't believe that, Russia will use it, or Russia used it before, like an instrument of an impact to the Israeli government to make a pressure. It's not that, because, these citizens, these immigrants, they are also citizens of Israel. I mean, they also citizens of the Russian Federation. This is why they, I don't believe, it's just from my personal point of view that they will not make some effect or pressure on their Israeli government or Russian government. It's a part of, like humanitarian horizontal ties between two countries, because they just coming to Russia or they visited their relatives, the same from Russian sides, and it's make our relation in economy, in understanding each other better. But it doesn't mean that using this diaspora, Russia will make a pressure effect or make, something invade in the domestic policy and domestic issues of Israel.
Okay, and conversely, Russia is home to nearly 30 million Muslim people. And I'm wondering whether there were splits in public opinion, or whether perhaps public opinion was more on the side of the Palestinians throughout the course of the war in Gaza. What was the reality?
So the reality is, it's really so interesting, because it's not only about Russia, but it's also about whole international community. We see how after the 7th of October 2023, when Israel's government, IDF, started their operation in Gaza, Gaza people suffered a lot, and it leads, according, due to internet communication, to media, to profile, to different things, it leads the majority of international community, I mean just people, not about governments, they start to be highly concerned about the situation in Palestine. They start to learn about what's happening in this region, what's happening in this, holy land, why this conflict is ending, why they can sit together to make some, diplomatic efforts and to try it. The same happened in Russia. And, the most of population, of course, they are on the side of Palestinian people. They said that Israel should stop it. Israeli army, they are not against Jews. It's not about anti-Semitism. It's more about, the activities of government. I mean, the military government or military representative of Israel against civilians in Palestine. They are not in support, fully that Hamas is right, or if someone will go and to kill someone, it's good. No. They just, ordinary people, the majority of our population, they are in support, in favor of peace in this region. And of course, they are highly concerned. About the Muslim population, yes, we have a Muslim population, and they are, it's important part of our nation in Russia, and they also take part in our special military operation. They also, take part in decision making and political some issues, etc. And we are all together. We are in favor of peace in the region. We are not, against Israel. We are not against someone. We are just for peace, and we would like to establish a good relation. We don't have any, any Islamophobia or any xenophobia or any ethnic radical, just type of phobia. It's just for Russia, because Russia, we are a multinational state, multi-confessional state. We have not only, Christians, Orthodox, or Muslims. We have a lot of confession. We have a lot of nationalities. This is why we understand and we need prosperity for these countries and peace between two ancient nations like Arabs and Jewish, especially in the Holy Land.
Okay, and you've said that Russia does favor the creation of eventual Palestinian statehood. And when you look at the 20-point peace plan that President Trump put forward, there is mention of a pathway towards Palestinian statehood. Do you think Moscow could perhaps add some momentum to this process, being a large country, an influential country, and as we've been saying, it does have influence in Israel, even though, yes, as you say, the United States has perhaps more influence, at least on the politics. But do you think Russia will add some momentum to this pathway towards Palestinian statehood?
So I think yes, because Russian approach to the resolution of this, regulation of this crisis, it was from the USSR period, and if it was a Middle Eastern quartet in which it was Russia, the United States, the European Union, and the United Nations. We are all together. We're trying to create some mechanism of resolution of this conflict. We're just trying to understand how it will be, amplified in the real ground negotiation. I mean, for example, the majority of the resolutions, they said, okay, some countries say that we should recognize Palestine within the territory of 1967. But frankly, let's just imagine, after even this current recognition parade from the side of the European countries like Britain, France, and etc., they even don't talk about the borders of Palestine states, which will be borders. And in these terms, I think, in future, some commission, yes, international body with the participation of Russia can be useful for, make this negotiation, make this regulation process and its architecture maybe more strong. Because, of course, situation needed that all the international players, especially superpowers, not only like Russia, but also China, maybe India, maybe some countries from African side, for example, South Africa, who are, actively support Palestinian issue and just trying to make some cases in international courts, in different international bodies against the activities of Israeli army against Palestinian civilians. So in this case, we should create some international committee, which will really, be non-based, trying to make some real effort to resolve it. And in this case, of course, Russia can be one of the, one of the leading countries who will take part in it, who will help to create some new infrastructure, maybe to attract and to train new police, government bodies to creating a system for the future of Palestine. And I don't think that Israel will be against it, because again, the Israeli government have some trust to Russia. Just we can remember the situation during the last maybe 5-7 years in Syria, when according to the Russian military presence, Russian military police presence in the Syria, there was no some full-scale war between Israeli and Syrians. But now, when Russia just a little bit weakening its position in Syria, we take our some majority of, there is no so influential military presence now in Syria. This is why what happens between Israel and Syria, how they bomb Damascus every weekend, how they, attacked, how they widening their occupation territories in Golan Heights, and etc. But now, of course, after the visit of Ashara to Moscow, and the discussion is coming on that they interested in returning Russian military presence, police regulation between the border of Israel and Syria, it means that Russia can be effect on all the situation and the stabilization in the region, of course, so positively.
Right. Russia clearly has an important role that it could potentially play as a mediator here. But at the same time, and you mentioned Syria, but Russia has in the past had close ties and enjoys still to this day close ties with Iran. It's sometimes associated with some sympathy for Hezbollah. And these are, of course, Israel's arch enemies. How does Russia reconcile being friends with all parties?
So it's our pragmatic way how to create our policy towards the Middle East, because, today, in case of, if you're trying to be successful, if you're just trying to be, a real mediator, non-based, you should create a relation with all parts. It's, for example, Americans say that, okay, we will just be a mediator between Israel and Iran, for example, yes? But they don't have their own negotiations, their dialogue with Tehran. It's a problem. Russia had because, first of all, Iran it's our neighbor. Iran, it's our historical partner. Of course, we have some conflicts between, Russian-Persian wars and etc. It was a troubled time during the Soviet period, also with some conflict of interest. But despite the fact, after the Islamic Revolution from 1979, Moscow and Tehran has a good relations, and now our economy relations, our humanitarian culture. There are a lot of students from Iran in Russian universities, and it's important for bilateral relations. And we have the same with all the countries, with the Saudi Arabia, and this. It's also sometimes there are a lot of problems in relations. Yes, like some issues in relations between Riyadh and Tehran. But now they in good relations, but before it was not so good. But we, despite all the fact, we're trying to interact with all the parties, because in case, for example, they would like to start to speak to each other. Russia can be mediator. Russia is balancing. Russia don't try to, to make a friendship or alliance with one side, just make it, not in favor. Just trying to make some bad effect, some negative effect on the other side. We're just trying to balancing. We're just trying to create a strong and, diversified relation with all the partners in the region, because it's important for first of all, for our future national interest. Our personal interest in the Middle East, for creating more stronger and wider relations with different partners in the region, and in third, of course, for providing some security for our country and also for Middle East.
Okay, well, I'm being told we're out of time, but we really appreciate you speaking to us. Murad Sadygzade, thank you very much indeed for sharing that with us.
Welcome.
Well, that is all we have time for on Global News today. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Be sure to join us again tomorrow for more exclusive interviews. Until then, bye-bye.